For this observational assessment, we were looking at a class that we teach very frequently with our freshmen, which is on how to evaluate websites. So just a little bit about the class. What we do is we break the students into groups, and then we give them a website that is truly awful. And we ask them to figure out 5 reasons why the website Secondhand Smoke the Big Lie is not credible. And then we give them about 5 minutes to develop that list. Then we come back together as a class and discuss the reasons they came up with. And from that, we're able to launch into a discussion of how you're always going to want to be looking at basically the who, what, when, where, and why of a website, but the criteria you're going to use are going to be contextual. So who is the author of a website? When you're researching Shakespeare, there's going to be different criteria as to when you are researching health science topics. So for exercise 2, we used to give them a case study of basically about whether you should drink water that's been in water bottles and that's been in a hot car, and then ask them to develop a contextualized checklist of the gold standard, the very best website they could come up with. If they wanted to answer this question, who would they want the author of the website to be? What would the website be about? And so on. And so we would give them 5 minutes to do that, come back together as a class, decide on what the gold standard was, and then the final exercise was for them to actually find a website in which they could then argue that it fit the gold standard that the class had developed earlier. So that's kind of the layout. And we've had a lot of success with this class, but we wanted to do some observational assessment for it. So as a group, we got together and came up with our success matrix. Let me pull that up. Hold on a second. There we go. All right, so here is what a blank observational assessment would look like. This is from a few springs ago. How the session goes, so that's what the librarian would write about. And then we have our indicators. The students completed the worksheet was our first indicator, and that may seem really low level, but one of our challenges at our university is student engagement, and we wanted to see if students actually were even completing the worksheets, so that was a way for us to measure some engagement. Then we wanted to see if students recorded at least 5 reasons why the website was not credible, so we were checking to see whether they did exercise 1, and then we were checking on exercise 3, did students record a relevant website on the worksheet. So let me pull up a sample observation from that. So here is one from a colleague, and in her reflection, she discusses how it was really nice. Now, our Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes are 50 minutes. Our Tuesday, Thursday are an hour and 15. So first she's commenting on how it's so much nicer to have that luxury of extra time. And then about the professor, the class was a bit resistant. They had some criteria. So she gave them a little more time. She tried a method that another colleague, Caitlin, had tried of writing on the board, and that worked well to generate conversation. And then in exercise 3, we have the teams compare websites. It's a kind of and we call it the smackdown, who picked a website that was most closely adhering to the gold standard. And she says that it went well for this class. So she did her reflection, and then she looked at the worksheets. And let me just pull up a sample worksheet so you can see what it would look like. Here is one student's worksheet, and so here's exercise 1. He listed out the 5 reasons why the website was not credible. Exercise 2, what is the gold standard for websites? That one we were not evaluating with this observational assessment, so we just skipped down to 3, find a gold standard website, fda.gov. This is really pretty weak, right? He didn't really complete that one. But it looks like this student did do a good job listing out 5 reasons why the first one was credible. So if I was the librarian, I would have given credit to the student for fulfilling exercise 1 and not for exercise 3. So going back to the completed sheet, you can see that she had 21 students in her class and 21 of the worksheets were collected. And she found that more than 75% of the attendees actually did all the exercises. Then the next, students recorded relevant websites on the worksheet. This is actually flip-flopped, right? So this was the third one. In this case, 50 to 75% of the worksheets. And exercise 3, there was some problems there. but they did do better on the 5 reasons why websites were not credible. So having seen that, she can see that there was only partial success for that exercise 3, that final exercise. So even though she had thought the smackdown went well, having reviewed the worksheets, she now knows that things didn't go quite as well as they should have. And here's her text about what she thought worked and what didn't work. And so what my colleague had done with this observational assessment was took this information and redid how she did exercise 3. And in her next observational assessment, she reflected back and saw improvement on exercise 3 based on what she had seen from this observational assessment. On a program level, when we collected all of them across the program, so each of us had done 2 or 3, we found that exercise 3, we kept having problems. We could jigger it, we could kind of shove it in, but there were definite problems there. And so what we ended up doing was just completely, interestingly enough, we completely redid exercise 2, and that led to better results for exercise 3. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Well, let me tell you exactly what we did change, because that might be of interest to you. So what happened was that we used to have exercise 2 being a totally different problem. So exercise 1 was about secondhand smoke. Exercise 2 was about drinking water from water bottles and hot cars. What we started doing instead was exercise 1, secondhand smoke, and then exercise 2 would be, now that we have identified a bad website about secondhand smoke, what will we look for a good website on secondhand smoke? Created criteria for that. And then exercise 3 was now find a gold standard for the gold standard website that reflects the criteria that you just talked about with secondhand smoke. So rather than jumping topics, if we kept it all within one topic, we saw a dramatic increase in student understanding, and they did much better on the worksheets. So hopefully that gives you some ideas of how we've used it individually to improve a class, and then as a program to change our curriculum.